Don't get hung up on the title. Just call yourself head of marketing. That's fine. The concept of like a good leader won't be replaced by AI. They'll be replaced by other good leaders that know how to leverage AI. And so as a fractional, we need to bring those tools to the table. The right time is now. Now. If you run a team and led strategic initiatives in your area of expertise for at least 10 years, you're probably ready to be a fractional.
Dean, it's 2025 and the industry of frac is growing like crazy, and people are all of a sudden wanting to say, oh, I'm a fractional of this, I'm a fractional of that. It is super cool to be fractional right now. But what does it actually take to become a fractional executive in 2025 and beyond? Let's talk about that today. What do you think?
I think it's a great topic, and I think there's a lot for us to cover here. So let's jump in, man.
All right. So how to become a frac? Do I just say, I am now fractional and run out there and get an F put on my chest and just like fractional? Is that what it takes?
You know, that as long as you put fractional in your title or your professional headline on LinkedIn, you're fractional, right? That's it. That's all it takes.
That's all it takes?
That's all it takes.
Well, now, so that's what it takes to become fractional, but does that actually get us clients?
There you go. That's the real question, right? We can call ourselves whatever the heck we want, right? We see a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners call themselves, chief executive officer, and it's of themselves. That's okay. We all do it. We're founders, we're call yourself whatever you want. The reality is that, are you actually building revenue? Are you building a business? Are you delivering value as a fractional executive? That's really the question that people are, when they say, how can I become a fractional executive? They want to know how to actually do the work to land the clients, not just hang your shingle on LinkedIn and say, here I am.
Yeah. Okay, so that being said, I got to ask then, so it sounds like there's some work and thought that has to go into becoming a fractional, which I guess kind of makes sense. But why is now the right time then? Like, why is everybody so hopped up on it right now? And why should someone join the fray?
There you go. Yeah. Well, I think the fractional movement has grown so much in the last 5 years and really accelerated in the last 2. And so there's this sort of like timing thing that I talked to a lot of fractionals about. And like, am I too late? Have I missed the wave of opportunity? And then with the economy and all of the things going on in the US, and is it the right time for me as an individual? I've got to support my family. I've got to pay the bills. When is the right time? And I tend to say something along the lines of, when is the perfect time to have a child? You don't have the big enough house. You don't have enough cars. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough career. The right time is now. Now. So that's a philosophical kind of approach. But if you really boil it down strategically, let's think strategically about what's going on in the US business world right now. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty. We've seen the stock market go up and down like a roller coaster, and it's probably going to continue to do that. And that obviously has a ripple effect in corporate. And corporate holds back. They stop hiring, especially the higher priced executives, or they lay them off. Yeah. It makes sense to lay off a higher priced executive because you get the dollars saved versus a few lower level employees. So they cut middle and senior and executive management. So we're seeing this sort of trend happening. And so a lot of the fracs I talk to, or the wannabe fracs, right, are people that have been either asked to leave and like, here's your golden parachute, it's time to go out of corporate, or they're done with the grind, right? Either way, they're kind of out there. They see this trend and they want to know what's going on. The thing that I think is prime time now is that even in the small and mid-sized businesses, which is where we work as fractionals, we don't work in the executives level at a corporate, like a large corporate. They don't hire fractionals. They hire specialty consultants, different business.
Right.
So in the small and medium-sized businesses, they're not hiring senior executives right now because of the uncertainty. but it leaves that talent and experience gap in their
Yes.
team. So they have the need, they don't have the, let's say, courage to hire that $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 fully loaded executive right now. They don't have it. So
Right.
there's a need and there's budget, but not the budget to hire a full-timer. What better way to position yourself as that executive with all the talent to fill the gap at a fraction of the cost?
So this is an interesting point, and it's interesting because you're right. We're looking at the fact that we have companies that are sitting there with bleeding necks right now. They need to grow. They need the expertise. They can't afford the expertise on a full-time basis, but they have some money, and that money can be allocated towards a fractional. Right? It's kind of like, where would you want to be if you were selling a hot dog outside of a concert hall when it gets out, or in the middle of Central Park? Well, you want to be outside the concert hall because that's where all the hungry people are. They just got out of the concert. They're hungry, right? They need to eat now. They'll eat your hot dog. And that's kind of where small businesses and medium-sized businesses are right now. Yeah. They're leaving that venue hall and realizing, crap, I need help, but I can't afford it. And that's, as you said, that's exactly where fractional fits. But that's cool and all. And it's nice that there's a need in the market. But how does someone evaluate that they can actually fill that need? That they can actually be a fractional executive in these companies if they're coming from a corporate environment where they were just an executive for a company, or maybe they were a consultant in a management firm and they dealt with multiple companies and in a particular area, wherever they're coming from. How do they know they've got the chops to be able to put on LinkedIn that I'm fractional?
Yeah, and feel good and confident about it too, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting question because there's still a lot of confusion around what is a fractional and what isn't a fractional.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say recently, I'm a fractional consultant. Those are different things. You can be both. You can do fractional work and you can be a consultant also, but it's not the same thing. Those are separate ways to engage with a client. So how do I know I'm ready? How do I know I can do the work? First is understanding what the work is. First is understanding what the role is. And so as a fractional executive, and sometimes I use the term fractional leader because people get afraid of executive. Well, I was a director or I was a VP. Does that mean an executive? What does that mean? Don't get hung up on the title. Don't get hung up on the title. A lot of the members in my Launchpad community, they lean into the title of head of sales, head of HR, head of product, because they don't want to get pinned in or excluded because they're not at the right level. So head of something works really well. And it also takes the sting out. Well, I've never been a CMO, but I've run a marketing team. I can't really call myself a fractional CMO because I've never really done that. And that gets into their brain and that actually is a self-sabotage. So just call yourself head of marketing. That's fine.
Nice. I like that.
So how do you know you're ready to do it? I think there are two pieces to the are you ready? One is financially, are you ready? And the second is experience, are you ready? So let's talk about experience first. If you run a team and led strategic initiatives in your area of expertise for at least 10 years, you're probably ready to be a fractional. You can probably take that experience and focus it into a small handful of clients. Okay?
Yeah.
If you've been doing consulting and not just the button pushing tactical stuff, but led strategy, led implementation for at least 5 years, you were probably a corporate exec or something before that. You're probably ready to jump in. If you held at least that director level job title in corporate, especially in bigger corporate, you're probably ready. So just from a tenure role kind of perspective, that's sort of what I think about. If you've just been the tactician, the implementer, then doesn't mean you can't be in this world, but you want to position yourself a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on that, before we get on to the financial side of it, I want to ask you a question there, or interject it a little bit, because, one of the interesting interplays here is we're starting to consider workforce differently. Okay. With the rise of AI employees and so on and so forth, we're considering workforce differently. And one of the things that AI is forcing us to do in workforce analysis is look and realize that, there have been positions that were strategic, there were positions that were tactical, and there were positions that were analytical. And so I wanted to put to you this concept, because I hear you and I agree with you that as a fractional, you have to be able to lead strategy. But I think as a fractional, you also had that background in the analytical as well.
Absolutely.
And maybe you have done the tactical, but that's not the last thing that you did. You know how to take the data, analyze it, and create strategy.
You can't separate, in my mind, analytical and strategy development, right? You have to have the data. You have to have something to inform the strategy. So absolutely right. And the way we get to the data is changing, right? We can get to that data and get to real, conclusions much quicker utilizing AI and the tools we have on hand. So that speeds up the process. So we can be more impactful more quickly. It's the concept of like a good leader won't be replaced by AI. They'll be replaced by other good leaders that know how to leverage AI. And so as a fractional, we need to bring those tools to the table. So maybe that's part of Are You Ready, is to go out and do some research, train up, get familiar with and comfortable with some of these tools. Because there's a good likelihood, if you're working in kind of a legacy market, let's say you're working in like a manufacturing or a construction, sometimes they're slow to adopt new technologies, right? And you bring new technology to the conversation, you're going to be elevated big time.
Real quick.
So please, you brought that piece up, because that is a big part of when we come in from the outside, we're expected to bring new ideas, new tools, new approaches, right? So I think that's a big piece of it. So yeah, no, you're right on. So the other piece is the financial. In my community, we're seeing new fractionals land their first fractional engagement in around 90 days, give or take, plus or minus. But I also talked to a lot of other fractionals that are 6 months in and are like, holy cow, I still haven't landed my first one. And they're starting to see the cash strain hit. So from a financial, are you ready? I would suggest that you need to have 90 to 120 days of cash on hand to continue to pay your bills and continue to live your life, right? That feels like a long time, a long runway of cash. The hope is that, that stuff ends up just being in the savings account and never gets touched. But if you're 2, 3, 4 months in, you're starting to feel your funnel, you're starting to feel good, but you're out of cash, it changes how we show up. Changes how you show up. So when you show up to that next opportunity, maybe it's the first prospect that you've actually spoken to, you'll show up differently.
Desperate.
You'll cut your prices, you'll discount, you'll give them more than you should. So if you can have 90 to 120 days of cash in the bank, hoping that you won't need to use it all, that's a really good baseline for knowing that, look, you're starting a new business. That's what you're doing. You're starting a business. It just takes time to get the wheels in motion.
Yeah. And Dean, I want to put a pin in that right there and say, let's do another video on that.
Okay.
Let's do another video looking at what the first 3 to 6 months in business as a fractional executive is like, and what you should expect in that first 3 to 6 months. So this is great. We know now why now is the right time. We know now why we're the right person. Okay. And so let's go on and y'all go watch this next video, because we're gonna shoot this next video just for y'all, because I know some of y'all want to know this too. Okay. What does this first 3 to 6 months look like? So we're gonna shoot that video next here on the Fractional Pros podcast. As always, you know who he is? He's Dean. I'm Atiba. We're the Fractional Pros. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.